The idea was inspired by the Perfect Match game in Fall Guys. If you didn't know, it's a super simple game where you need to memorize the icons on the tiles, and when an icon is displayed, you need to go to that tile. I wanted to make a micro version of the game but layer chaos in between the periods of when the icon is going to be revealed. And this could literally be anything. Enemies, weird platforming, bosses, puzzles, things that happen to the tiles themselves. But my only concern is whether the things happening in between will be too overwhelming for the player to even remember where the reveal icon is. And with that being said, we're going to build a prototype to see exactly that. Also, did I forget to mention that the player is a chicken? So I started off making a 4x4 grid with up to 7 different tile tops, which are just colors for now, but will change the icons or something more recognizable in the future. I created an empty game object named Tile Manager and attached a custom script to it, which basically decides which tiles will be spawning in, deciding the result tile and duration of the wave itself. I thought the 4x4 grid might be a bit too big and was still thinking about the problem I highlighted earlier with overwhelming the player, so I reduced it to 3x3. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, with the original idea, I wanted the chicken to poop an egg and place it onto the correct tile as their answer. But I quickly realised that this idea was poop, so I threw it in the trash. I also attached the timer to the player as a way of telling them that the reveal tile will be shown in this amount of time. For controls, the analog appears when the player pushes down onto the screen, and on release the player automatically jumps. I thought this was a bit more intuitive than having 2 separate buttons, and it works pretty well. I changed the camera angle to this and started to think a bit more about what we could do to complement the memory game. So I started off making enemies, and what better enemy to a chicken than a fox? A square fox, with nothing but 2 cubes for eyes and 1 for a nose. That has to do for now. I made the fox move in the direction of the 3x3 grid with the player able to jump on their heads and destroy them. Destroy them. Okay, 1 second. I also thought it would be fun if the foxes didn't destroy straight away out of thin air, but instead bump into each other. Kind of like Mario. Well, it is like Mario.
Oh no!
Next up is cubes. I mean spikes. Shh. This will spawn randomly onto the tiles. And I don't think I learnt my lesson from the foxes because it didn't really feel intense enough again, but it will have to do for now. I think instead it could follow the player's location instead maybe, but we'll come back to it. This was an experimental idea. It kind of all is actually, to be honest, but I was thinking of food covering the tiles and the player needed to clear it to see the icons. This definitely has potential, but it's going to take a backseat for now. Next is walls. Yep, just walls. Walls? I can't say it. But with this one, the player needs to jump or walk through the gaps to avoid being pushed off. This was fairly easy to set up actually. I just made 6 blocks and when spawning, I simply destroy one of them and it felt pretty good. And now for the big one, the sumo chicken. I don't know why it's a sumo chicken, but it's the first thing that came to mind. So when this spawns in, the player needs to either knock it off or avoid it completely. Okay, it's a bit OP. I then decided to add a bit of text which informs the player what they need to do, in addition to letting them know what wave complement will be spawning in, whether it will be the foxes, the sumo chicken, the spikes, the walls. I also spent a bit of time adding this mushroom wave in where the player needs to jump on a mushroom and avoid the spikes. Yeah, it's just the purple cube for now.
Wow.
Coming back to the sumo, it's a bit OP. So instead, I made it have a health bar and the player needed to register a certain amount of hits to destroy it. This could be a boss further down the line maybe. Okay, so right now, the tiles just disappear and the player could easily jump onto the tiles if they time a jump right. So instead of making the tiles disappear, I replaced them with spikes. I decided to embed the result tile within the 3x3 grid to make it more of the focal point, instead of the player having to look in a different location for the result. And I think it worked pretty well. I thought it would be a good time to add a bit of feedback for certain interactions, and this is what it looks like now. Okay, so next steps. Now that I have built and played the prototype, I feel there needs to be some sort of visual progression, something the player is contributing to, because otherwise the scene is fairly static and there's no change from score 1 to 1000. And with that being said, I'm taking some inspiration from Stack, but with my game the player starts from the ground and progresses to different experiences, if that makes any sense. But that might change again. Because it's in really early stages at the moment, so we'll have to see. And that's it for this video. If you liked the video, hit the like and subscribe buttons below. I'll see you in the next one.